When structure is compromised for ornament, that's where the greenhouse typically falls apart for me in storytelling, especially in the context that we are speaking about. In Shadows and Gods, there is a nuanced example of this in the exchange between Pius and the bishop. To Pius, the bishop is sanctuary. He's this embodiment of piety that Pius requires to ground himself in his world. When the bishop ends up confessing his unbelief to Pius, for him, that's not just it's not just a declaration of moral failing. In fact, it's a structural crisis. In terms of architecture, I like to think about this along two lines: load-bearing elements and cladding. Load-bearing elements would be the virtues that have substance, that have the power to cement us in society, like honesty and altruism and mutual accountability, whereas cladding would denote such things as and just empty boasting. That would be cladding. Traits that have no real substance. So you can see with the bishop in question, he was a person who professed himself as holy, was very flamboyant, and things that these are things that may come across as very charismatic, and people are attracted to that kind of thing. But he didn't possess any real virtues. The goodness that Pius was clinging onto was just performative. And that's why, at the end of the day, the building collapsed, the cathedral collapsed. And I'm speaking about the bishop in this context. We hope for perfection, as you said, with architecture. We strive for perfection. But it's in a mess that the story is really made. And that's why in storytelling, I embrace it wholeheartedly. I love flawed characters that threaten the structure. But at the end of the day, what I aim to do with the story is to show that architectural beauty without structural integrity is going to deliver nothing but a liability in the end. Hallways are transitional spaces. They're spaces in which to orient our bodies in. You step out of one location into a hallway to make a quick decision and move on to the next destination. So they are decision-making spaces. And because they are not built to house any elaborate function, they're typically designed to be narrow. And it's in the narrow nature of the hallway that it could be deployed as a weapon. Imagine with me that I were to be attacked by 50 people. I against 50 people would stand no chance. But if I were to route them through a narrow hallway so that they are arranged in such a way that I could get to deal with one person at a time, then I stand a chance. And that is a weaponized hallway. In my book, Shadows and Gods, Carolee finds herself in a hallway. The hallway of the GEM or church, where she sees patrons come and go, all looking for one particular thing, and that is benevolent disillusionment. And she, of course, is one of the people looking for the same thing. Does she feel trapped in this hallway? No. In fact, it's the opposite. Carolee finds herself liberated in disillusionment. And that's the beauty about hallways. Hallways can, in their transitional nature, deliver you into a prison and deliver you at the same time to freedom. And I think it all depends on the perspective or the outlook on life that you have. To the reader, doesn't seem free at all. In fact, she does seem to be trapped. To me, walls are never just bricks and mortar. Every architectural wall has a reason for being, a social requirement. This could be a desire for privacy, a desire for security, demarcation of function, or perhaps a hunger for ornament, which speaks to vanity. This means that every physical wall has a social component. It's a duality of sorts, the body and soul of a wall. If my characters were to hit a wall in my books, I like for it to be physical. But trust that that physical collision will have a social component. And it's in the exploration of that social component that things really get interesting to me. There are essentially two kinds of writers, pantsers and plotters, discovery writers and planners. Discovery writers develop their characters and then allow themselves on a journey with these characters, a journey of discovery, where the characters dictate the plot and the author exerts minimal control. So you find that the story just develops very organically through the characters. And then there are planners, those who want to know the end of the story from the beginning and then define a few plot points along the way, one of these story structures that have worked over time, so that at every point in time of telling the story, they know exactly what is supposed to happen, where they are supposed to be. And so the danger of this is that you're going to end up with something really rigid and characters that may end up being just plot devices to serve the story. My training as an architect favors planning. I don't think I can start anything without having a plan for it. But then I also love character-driven stories. So I find myself embracing a hybrid between the two. I will plot, and then I will develop characters to the point that they become so real to me that they demand their own space. So when I throw them into the plot, they decide where they need room to breathe. And I think that's just what I seem to favor in storytelling, a hybrid between both. So but my training as an architect, the habit that I can't seem to shake is that before I start writing anything, I have to plan. Buildings don't just fade into nothing. Buildings, whether they're in their prime or ruin, always harbor stories about human beings. They tell you how we live. They tell you what we respect, what we fear, what we celebrate. When you look back at the story of man from ancient Mesopotamia to ancient Egypt, from ancient Greece to Rome, you find that people built temples and tombs. And that tells you that there was a particular fascination with death, perhaps a fear. People build monuments to corpses. I think it shows that human beings have always feared the annihilation of the human race. They've always feared death, to the point that they would exalt the dead bodies onto gods to take care of them, amongst other things. So I think this shows that even after a building collapses and is no more, the story behind the structure remains and endures in history. Books, for me, are the same way. Books have a story that the author was willing to tell, the reason for telling the story, the method of telling the story. So it shows you how the author thinks. It shows you perhaps the author's frustrations. And that is something that is unintentionally delivered. So while there is the first story, which is the main plot, the characters and all of that, which hopefully the author tells well and readers can accept and imbibe and remember, there is also a second story that every reader takes away from a book. And that is the unique conviction that we don't share with anyone else. If a story can generate that kind of conviction out of a reader, I think it is successfully told. And for me as a writer, that is the more important message that I want to pass with my writing. I want every person who opens my book to walk away from it with their own unique story. That's the truth that I want to remain after the book is closed.